All right, lesson 93, the descriptive language of poetry. When people write poetry, not only do they use rhyme and rhythm and alliteration and assonance like you studied so far, but there's also other things they use to create poetry to make it colorful, appealing, and yeah, just to describe things in a descriptive way. So, one of the ways they're going to talk about in this lesson is they appeal to the five senses. They appeal to seeing or your sight, hearing, feeling, your sense of smell, and your sense of taste. Now, taste probably won't be as common. Seeing there'll be a lot of, hearing there'll be a lot of, and possibly feeling. Smell and taste, there could be some, but there won't be as much. So, in your example here, they have a poem that you can read, and then they give you some examples. So, it can be kind of hard sometimes to figure out which is which, but under the sight, they have into the stone heap darts the mink. The cattle come crowding through the gate. The frolicsome yearlings frisk and jump. So, basically, when you're reading this poem, what's happening? Are you, in your mind, are you seeing something, or is it appealing to a sound that you would hear? In this case, you already know it's sight. What can make you so go under sound, and this is where it gets some people get confused. So boss, boss, co. The friendly sheep his welcome bleat, and you think, well, I can see the sheep bleating. That might be, but the main idea there is you're hearing the sheep. The sheep is bleating. It's saying what it's saying. Pigs come grunting to his feet. You can see them, but um, you can also hear them. Probably seeing is so common in writing that if any of these other ones you can you can attach to the phrase, then don't go with seeing. If you can't, if whatever the poem is, well, we'll get into this with the lesson then. Another thing that poets use are denotation and connotation. So, denotation of a word is its strict, exact meaning. So, and connotation is the word's personality or the feeling that the word gives beyond its denotation. So, a poet describing some tall, graceful trees might write about their slender trunks because the word slender has just the right feel for its context. In other words, slender means thin, but you might use slender or slim or thin or spindly because they all have a little different connotation or different feeling. They all mean the same thing. The denotation is the same, but the connotation is different. And so sometimes when you're writing poetry, you will pick the word with the right connotation. Then we have figurative language, and these you should be fairly familiar with, but the common ones are the simile, the metaphor, personification, and hyperbole. So, simile is like or as comparison. So, he runs like the wind. You know that you get the idea. Metaphor, you compare, very similar to a simile. However, you don't use like or as, you actually say it is. And this one can be confused with hyperbole. But probably one way to separate it is hyperbole is an exaggeration, whereas a metaphor is a comparison. So if you say, um, I am my neighbor's Bible, instead of saying I am like my, if you'd say I'm like his Bible, that would be, or I'm like a Bible to him, that would be a simile. But if you skip like or as and you say I am my neighbor's Bible, that is a figure of speech, but not necessarily an exaggeration. An exaggeration is where you say it weighed, well, in their example here, bowed by the weight of centuries he leans. Um, so it's exaggerating what what life has done to him. It makes him. It makes it. It's not literally true, but it makes a vivid mind picture for you to see. So that those can be hard to separate, but try to remember a metaphor like a simile. It's like using something else to explain um, what you're trying to get across. Whereas a hyperbole is, it's not necessarily referring to you as something else, but exaggerating um, the comparison. Personification, you probably already know what that is, but that is when anything that's non-living has characters of something that is living. So if a tree waves, that's personification. Drowsily ticks the kitchen clock. Um, a clock can't be drowsy. That's personification. Then the other one we have is onomatopoeia, which this one, again, usually isn't too hard to pick out, but it can be because it's words that sound, have an imaginative sound. So when you say the rattle of the empty wagons, rattle kinds of sounds like when something rattles. When you say the rumble of the distant thunder, rumble kind of sounds like what rumble means. All right, so that's onomatopoeia. The sheep bleat. Bleat is kind of like what they do. When pigs come grunting, grunting kind of sounds like grunting. So that's what onomatopoeia is. That can be kind of hard to pick out, but um, yeah, do the best you can. Now let's just grab a couple here in the lesson to help you out. So part A, from each selection, copy the words that appeal to the senses and write which of the senses each word or word group appeals to. So here we're going to get some practice with what I was telling you about. So don't necessarily always go right to sight, because sight is what's obvious. Pick out, write down the ones that are sight. But if a phrase could be sight or could be sound or could be touch, um, then go with the other one. So number one, my men grow mutinous day by day. Not anything going on there. My men grow ghastly, wan, and weak. So ghastly, wan, and weak would appeal to what? Well, it's something you can see. So you have ghastly, wan, and weak. All right, and that one's sight. That one appeals to your sight. All right, what else is in here? The stout mate thought of home. A spray of salt wave washed his swarthy cheek. So we have the spray of salt. Now this one could be two different ones. So if you think about a spray of salt hitting your cheek in this case, you could see in your mind, you could be envisioning that, but that also could be something you're feeling. All right. And then we have washed his swarthy cheek. So swarthy cheek again. He's trying to get you to see something. All right. Let's just do number 3. I paused last eve beside the blacksmith's door and heard the anvil ring, the vespers chime. Okay, there's two in there. Don't just write a whole line. Separate out the little sets of words that he's trying to get you to go. But this one has a big hint because it says heard. Um, but one of the things is the anvil ring, and obviously you're hearing that. All right. There is one. They do have one that's taste. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but there is one taste in there. So when you read the line, just think about if whatever it's saying could be appealing to you tasting. All right, let part B. In each stanza, choose the word with the best connotation to match the context. All right, so this one can be kind of hard sometimes. So, no, number one, gazing on the eastern sky, I contemplate with a tremble, quiver, or shiver of delight. My Lord might come today. With a tremble of delight, a quiver, or a shiver. Like I said, these often can be tough, but you're looking for the one that has just the right connotation. So, gazing on the eastern side, contemplate. Now, this I guess could depend who you are, um, because my Lord might come today. If that's causing fear in your heart, then I guess tremble would have almost the right connotation. Shiver is more when you're cold, and quiver is not something you use real much, but that is the one they're after. Quiver. Um, it's not supposed to be necessarily a fearful thing, but not a cold thing, but a quiver. Like it's just like a little, almost excitement, I guess. You quiver with excitement. All right, let's go down to number 5. Feebly the feverish man tossed and turned. None of his cackling, jabber, or prattle could we understand. So we have a feverish man tossing. Cackling, jabber, and prattle are all kinds of rambling, talking. Um, which one has the right connotation? So, probably not cackling. Prattle probably would be more like a child blabbing away. Jabber, it would be more like an incoherent. So, in number 5, probably going to go with jabber. And some of these you can look up. The definition will be a little different, but for the most part, you want to look at it and think about how you normally, what the connotation, what's the feeling that word gives you, where do you normally use it, and then try to match the one with the setting that you have right here. All right, part C, write which kind of figurative language is found in each selection. So, number 1, show me your God, the doubter cries. I point him to the smiling skies. That one's pretty obvious. You have the smiling skies, therefore it is personification. And you don't need to write down the part of speech, they just want you to write which kind is there. Number 5, the night was long, so long it seemed at last that years had gone and life was nearly past. Alright, so he's saying that that night was so long that it seemed like years had gone and life was nearly past. So that would be an exaggeration. It might have seemed hyperbole. Might have seemed long, but you get the idea how he felt. But it probably didn't really actually feel like years had passed. Part D, from each set of lines, copy one word that makes use of onomatopoeia. So, alright, they went this way, which shouldn't be too hard. So, they want you just to pick one word out of each number. So, let's go with number 3. As a mother stills her child, thou canst hush the ocean wild. All right, and there you're gonna go with hush, because hush sounds like, well, sounds like what you do when you hush. So, and that's what automatopoeia is. All right. Review. Part A, it says for each pair, write the letters of the selection that has the best unity or coherence. So you will simply go down through there, read them, and pick which one has the best unity or coherence. So for number 1, it'll either be A or B. For 2, it'll be A or B. 3, A or B. Letter B, write the letter of the method used to produce emphasis in each selection. You will not use all the letters. So there again, read each one. Out of that list, pick which one they used to produce emphasis in that number. Make sure you turn the page. There's 3 more questions on the back. All right, if you have any other questions on that, you can feel free to ask.